Great. Welcome back to Senate Education, Friday, March 3rd, 2:42 p.m. Committee Bill Request 230951, Draft 1.2. Ms. Wasserman, can you just give us the high overview? We've been in detail and maybe also just note your edits.
Sure. Becky Wasserman, Legislative Counsel. So this bill is establishing a school construction aid task force to look at issues relating to school construction aid. The task force is being asked to come back to this committee, as well as the institutions committees, Ways and Means, and the Senate Finance Committee as well, with a report for recommendations on legislative action regarding a few topics. Those are the needs, including programmatic and health and safety of statewide school construction projects, funding options for a statewide school construction program, and that would include incentive plans, a governance structure for the oversight and management of the school construction aid program, and criteria for prioritizing school construction funding. And the task force would be chaired by the state treasurer, and they would be using as part of what they are studying, the results of the reports from Act 72, which are looking at funding options for school construction, and there is a statewide assessment report that will also be completed for the task force to review. The task force is being the treasurer's office is being appropriated $200,000 to, in part, hire a school construction expert to provide technical assistance. And the change that was made in draft 1.2 is that they could also use that $200,000 to help support any other administrative, technical, and legal assistance that is being provided to the task force, and that is being provided by the Agency of Education and the State Treasurer's Office. And then I mentioned this, but the other change is that the chair of the committee is the treasurer. In the previous version, the treasurer and the Secretary of Education were co-chairing the committee, the task force.
So we did get confirmation that the treasurer's. Great. Committee, we have draft request 230951, draft 1.2 on the school construction bill before us. Do I see a motion to move the bill? Moved by Senator Weeks. Second, Senator Williams. Discussion.
That's good.
Seeing,
That's great.
Seeing no major discussion, we'll ask Senator Williams to call the roll.
I will. Campion,
Yes.
Kulik,
Yes.
Machine,
Yes.
Weeks,
Yes.
Williams is a yes.
Great. So 5-0-0. Senator Kulik, you'll be the reporter. I'll bring it down in a little while, and then it'll be on the calendar, be on notice, but then it'll go right to approps, and you'll be invited into approps. I don't think it'll go anywhere else, and then hopefully we can get it out of approps soon. I'll give Jane the heads up, and maybe we can get it on the floor sometime later next week.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Becky.
Yeah, and thanks everyone. Great. Is Mr. Nichols here? Yes. Yes, right. Thanks. Oh, yeah, have, safe drive. Okay, we'll see you later. Yeah,
See you later.
great to see you.
Otter.
Be safe.
Thank you, I will. Be careful. See you later. Okay, do we have updated?
We're unable to hash out compromise language.
Sure.
so.
Just needed that actually. Great, thank you. Mr. Nichols, we'll just be just one moment. We just went to get some clean copies of your updated testimony. Great, thank you very much. So could we get one more? Great. Okay, before us, we have, well, let me set the table a little bit. We asked, Health and Welfare asked our committee to come up with language and ideas, needs in order to start a pre-K program for all intents and purposes. That was the direction we were given. That would go to be attached to the early childhood education bill. And questions were asked, hey, what would this look like? How much time would we need? What sorts of things might we need around teacher certification, governance, all that sort of thing. What are all those questions that are out there that a summer study committee could jump into? And we asked Mr. Nichols to lead the conversation, and I know he has come in with his work with his other colleagues from the Association of School Board Members, Principals, etc., NEA. And Sarah Kenny also was part of those conversations. And senators will recall that Ms. Kenny is with the group. Let's Grow Kids. Okay. With that, Mr. Nichols, we understand that we're not in agreement, but let's start with what your thoughts are and what your group came up with.
Sure. So we were under the impression that our job was through S56 to come back with an implementation plan for a study committee for 4-year-olds being in school. So that's where I went from, Senator Campion, and I thought I indicated that to you on the phone yesterday too. So if I misunderstood that, I apologize for that. I would not be the right person to lead a study committee if it wasn't focused on that. I just want to share, we just met Vermont NEA, VSBA, VPA, and VSA. And I told Sarah and Sherry and other people in a conversation earlier today that 2 of those groups were not with us. We're not able to join the call with Let's Grow Kids. So we wanted to make sure that the 4 of us were all on the same page. So in that meeting we did. So I just want to share a few summation points, and then we have a possible compromise for the committee to consider.
Well, this might be, let me just clarify, and I will certainly apologize, and I will go back and look carefully. Senate Health and Welfare, as well as the direction I have from the Pro Tem's office, is that we are, during the summer, there would be examination and study to answer the questions, how would we get to a pre-K program? What would that look like? What would the timeline be? Good luck, Kate, see you later. Those are the questions. That is what the direction from the corner office was to me. And you're saying that you're talking about opening the doors on July 1?
So what we're talking about is, and I'll share with you the major points. We think the bill should clearly state that beginning July 1, 2023, any school district that chooses to operate or is already operating a full day, full week program should receive full student ADM at the rate of 1.0. We also think that all school districts shall have planned for providing full day, full week pre-K for all 4-year-olds in public schools or arranged by public schools by October 15th, 2024, with the goal of having all school districts being required to provide or arrange for full day, full week pre-K for all 4-year-olds effective July 1, 2025. And that's what I thought we were working on. And I've got some more notes here related to the conversation that we had and to the plan that Let's Grow Kids shared with us as well. Is it all right to share that?
Into the conversation, tell me what your expectation was.
Sure.
Please join us at the table.
Okay, thank you. Our understanding from conversations both down the hall and here was that, yes, we wanted a study committee to look at expanding universal pre-K in Vermont, but not with the assumption that it would be all 4-year-olds in public schools, but that it would be looking at that as an option, but also the option of expanding our current universal pre-K program, which is mixed delivery, because there were so many concerns that were heard about the potential impacts on the rest of the system of a quick transition into all 4-year-olds being in public schools. So the approach we took was thinking about school 4-year-olds in public schools as one option. So really looking at what is the best proposal for studying, what is the best way to expand universal pre-K in Vermont with the best outcomes for children, and looking at 4-year-olds in public schools as one option, and also expansion of our current mixed delivery system and what some of the options would be under both of those models, and looking at what would need to happen and what would potential outcomes be in each of those approaches.
Well, based on that, I do think there's going to be some of the questions and there's going to be a lot of overlap. I think they're get to a point where I will touch base. I mean, our jurisdiction truly is, and I will confirm this with Ledge Council, but pre-K in our public schools. I believe that is what this committee's jurisdiction is. And so we do have 3 members of Health and Welfare, and we have Senator Gulick, who has been willing to, if we need her to act as kind of a liaison, a back and forth. I kind of talk, sort of just saying that you would agree to that, guessing that you probably would, Senator Gulick, to help us really get to what we need to do in the coming weeks. So I think, why don't we go through each of the proposals, and I'm actually going to start with the more broad one. I'm going to start with Ms. Kenny, since I suspect it's going to be more broad. So why don't we start there and then go to Mr. Nichols?
And if I can just reference too, so there's updated language from us this afternoon, because after we met with Mr. Nichols and folks from the School Boards Association, I tried to go through, and you also have language from Building Bright Futures, which is your statutorily created official advisor on all things early childhood to both the legislature and the administration. And they are, Dr. Nichols, who's the executive director, is away this week. But her team submitted information to you all. And so we actually started from the questions and considerations for potential further study document that they put together, which I think was pretty comprehensive and looked at all the options. So they have a, yes, exactly. Like a checklist.
Senators, this is
It
in
looks
your
like
file.
this, yeah.
Folder. Senator Gulick, you see that? Yes, Senator Gulick.
I see both of those, but when I click on them, I say that it says that I don't have access. So I don't know what's going on with that.
I think the Building Bright Futures one was posted on your committee's website this afternoon. Is that link isn't working?
Is that the link that's not working, Senator Gulick?
I mean, I see a Sarah Kenny folder and a Jay Nichols folder, and then oh, okay. It just opened up the one from Sarah Kenny, and let me try the Jay Nichols one.
And there's one from Anna
Yep.
Brulette.
Okay, I got them. Thank you.
And
Great.
then the Building Bright Futures one is from Anna Brulette.
Yep.
Another folder on there. Okay.
Great.
So Building
So-
Bright Futures
Yeah.
has, over the past many years, convened partners to talk about pre-K expansion and like work through issues with the mixed delivery system that we have with Act 166. So they provided you a host of resources, including this checklist. So we worked from that as a basis. And so the proposal that we are bringing to you is to look more broadly at convening an advisory committee or a study committee to report back to you all the potential pathways for expansion of universal pre-K in Vermont, and figure out what's the best option to do that, focusing on expanding equitable access to achieve the best outcomes for children. And so what I did quickly between our meeting at 11 and now is look at the proposal from Mr. Nichols and those folks, and pulled in any members that we hadn't included. So the list that you see in our document now is folks who we think should be present, including all the partners from Jay's document. And we also felt like it was really important to have people who are currently practicing.
How do I know I have the right document? You sent me multiple documents.
Yes, so this one at the top says, "Let's for Kids suggestions for S56 Universal Pre-K
That's
Study
right.
Language, March 3rd. Yeah, I think Hayden updated it on your website and in your folders, because he is very efficient. So we have proposed many of the same partners that are members as them. It includes everybody from Jay's list, but then also some one or two regional universal pre-K coordinators. So those are the folks who are actually coordinating pre-K programs on the ground right now around the state. A center-based and a family child care home private pre-K partners. Those are the programs that are currently partnering with Acton 166 to provide universal pre-K. The Head Start Association. And then we felt like it was really important to have family representatives. And I didn't finish a line there. So we were recommending one family representative of somebody with a universal pre-K age child, and then also somebody with a universal pre-K age child who receives special education services, because that's a particular sticking point. I think that we all agree needs work. And I did not finish that sentence, I see, but that was the intention there. We sort of, and this doesn't need to be in the final study language, but looking at kind of what's the range of options for consideration. So do we expand our current mixed delivery program? Do we expand only through public school programs? Do we expand to like full day for 4-year-olds and half day for 3-year-olds? Because there's this question of, we currently provide universal pre-K to 3-year-olds. So we don't want to just assume that they're better off without any universal pre-K. So what are some options for looking at both 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds? And then do we just remove 3-year-olds entirely and provide just 4-year-olds through mixed delivery or public school programs? So this is kind of a way of listing out all the potential options here for what to look at. And then
I have a question from Senator Gulick.
Oh, yeah,
please.
sorry.
Senator Gulick, please also don't
I'm
feel
sorry, I have my
obligated to
back
raise your
to you.
hand, just in case my head's just shout them out.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, I thought I heard you say earlier, Chair Campion, that our purview would be the public schools and not necessarily the private providers. Is that correct?
I think that's accurate. I really do. And even though, and that's why I thought, well, let's start wide and then maybe narrow. But I also am guessing, and I could be wrong on this, that there's going to have to be a little bit of, okay, this is some of the stuff that we've done. And I do think some of it will also have to be punted back to health and welfare as it relates to things outside of our purview. And I will check with Ms. St. James, but I really think this group is pre-K public school stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
But hi, Sarah. What I'm hearing from Sarah, though.
Sorry to have my back to you.
That's okay, no problem. What I'm hearing from Sarah, though, is that it's, this work would be much more expansive, it sounds like.
And that's why I think it might just be, we'll hear from Sarah and then we'll hear a little bit from Jay, and then the committee can sort of figure out, all right, do we combine these? Do we just say, Sarah, you're gonna have to take these recommendations to health and welfare, that sort of thing. But I think it's good for us all to sort of see what's out there and what the different options are.
Great. And I totally neglected to tell you all that my colleague Sherry Carlson is with us as well, who is the Chief Programs Officer at Let's for Kids, who I brought along for backup just in case there are questions about how mixed delivery works and the history of Act 166, which she's been a part of many of those conversations over the past couple decades. So
Okay, great.
you needed a content expert, she's your gal. So we built from Building Bright Futures matrix of looking at what's school-based, expanding mixed delivery, and then sort of what's the current model. And I pulled questions that we had come up with, and then the questions that were in Jay's document, and just suggested additional questions that the committee should consider. in addition to what Building Bright Futures had pulled together, which their document reflected most of what all the rest of us had identified was important, with a few exceptions. So I suggested adding those into there. And I do know that historically, I guess the Education Committee has looked at Act 166 broadly in both chambers, but that may have evolved in the past several years, and it's always been a collaboration, I think, with the Public Welfare Committee. So,
Act 166. the task
sorry,
force.
that's our
Ours.
current, yes, mixed delivery universal pre-K system that's been.
Yeah, that came out of the committee I was on in the
Yeah.
House, but,
Yeah.
you know, it just,
It
I think
definitely
it's a little
overlaps.
different here.
It
Yeah,
does overlap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does overlap. Okay.
So that's our proposal, is to look at moving 4-year-olds into public schools as one option, and also the potential of expanding through our current mixed delivery system, and creating all of that, sort of looking at all of that through the lens of expanding equitable access with the best outcomes for children. And of course, we also are always concerned about the potentially destabilizing impacts of any really rapid expansion of public schools in the near future, while we're trying to stabilize the birth to 5 system as a whole. So that certainly influences, some of the questions on here, which I think we all agree are important questions to get at about what the potential impacts would be.
So, yeah, and I think maybe my first initial response is, and we can have this conversation with health and welfare, but my understanding is we would love to get, and I believe the bill talks about getting to a pre-K public school program for everybody to at least have that option down the road. I mean, again, people could choose their own course of adventure with their child,
I think
all
that's
sorts of
I
different,
think that's the question, is sort of what does that choosing look like for families? Yeah.
right? So, right, whether or not it would, if that's the real question there, is it public funds that are going to, just
Potentially
if you
public
have,
funds
yeah,
either way, if it's childcare financial assistance
Right.
or education
Right.
funds, but it's more about, I think, the delivery mechanism for how that happens.
any
And I
initial,
will say also
Yeah.
that another difference is that we had recommended Building Bright Futures as the convener for this committee, because that is their role. They're statutorily obligated to be your advisor, and they have served in that capacity many times.
yeah, so what I'm envisioning is, if I look into the future in 10 years, 5 years, pre-K programs are in all the public schools, and parents might say, hey, that's gonna work really well for John. But they might also say, it's not gonna work for John because I want John closer to my office for pre-K also, or because John has done really well in these other settings. And so the big policy question I think you said is whether or not the legislature will eventually say, you really do have choice. Back to our school choice questions. I mean, that will you be able to take your dollars and continue for that pre-K private program if you have in your district a pre-K
And
in
available.
your building, Does that sound, I'm looking at my friends on health and welfare, does that sound accurate? Yes, Senator Bueller?
Thank you. Yes, I think you pretty much nailed the crux of the conversation, Chair Campion. Also, I just want to say from my point of view, I would like to see a gradual push in or inclusion of pre-K in the public schools as Mr. Nichols laid out, and also fully support the 1.0 ADM. I think that's really important that get bumped up, which it's now 0.5. Is that correct, Mr. Nichols?
0.43. Excuse me.
0.46. I think it's 0.46.
Oh, yeah, I think Sarah's right. Thank you, Sarah. 0.46.
Okay, so, yeah, that's
Yeah.
all that I would say, but yeah, I Chair Campion, I think you're correct about, the ultimate landscape that we're heading toward. Is it publicly funded or not? Yeah.
Yeah, and that does sound like one of the big policy decisions that would have to be determined or at least recommended over the summer, based on all of that. And, okay, that's really helpful.
Yes, I think for us, the question is the study committee looking at the full range of options? Or
Yeah.
is it just looking at a more narrow scope of what,
Yeah.
of a public school, strictly public school expansion possibility?
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say about the full ADM is that we think there's certainly merit to having further conversation about that idea. And until we build out childcare financial assistance on a cost of care model, which is going to happen over the next several years, we would also, until we get to that point, we would also want to think about what's the tuition model look like for those private partners. So if the districts are getting a full ADM and there's a private partner program that's providing universal pre-K in a full day, with the licensed educator, is there an opportunity to expand the tuition funds that are also going to those private partners in the interim period here?
Yeah, great. Yeah, Senator Gulick.
Mr. Nichols, can you respond to that just so we have a
Yeah.
conversation?
I can, I've got it in my testimony. I can though, if you want me to right now.
Okay, why don't we just, why don't you can respond to that and then we can just jump right into the testimony.
Well, we agree with Senator Gulick that we should have full ADM, and what we're seeing right now, and I apologize, Senator Campion, I'm really been sick the last couple of days, so I
No
apologize.
problem.
I'm going from my bed to my office and back and forth. I have not been anywhere else in 2.5 days. We think that they should be fully funding for ADM for schools, and we bring up the example of places like Winooski that there are no private care providers, and so we've got the schools doing it right now, but it's hurting them and their budget and stuff. And there's one of our poorest, systems in Vermont, our poorest communities. So we do think we should completely bump up the ADM to the full day amount if a school's offering a full day program and it's a licensed teacher that's actually teaching the kids. So, we have places like St. Albans City, Windsor, Winooski, off the top of my head, that are already doing full day programs, and they're funding it from local taxpayer dollars, which means it's hurting someplace else. So it would be really good if we went to full ADM for them. And that's one of the things we're asking for. All 4 of our associations are asking for it.
Yeah, and this is, I haven't been living this world as my colleagues have, so frankly, I just don't know the answer to some of these questions that are popping up, even with what they, the impact, this is a conversation really with the chair of finance, chair of appropriations. I mean, this is a bigger conversation, of course, that could just happen here or even health and welfare. But it's good to know that and frankly, I'm not living both worlds. So 3 of my colleagues are. Can you just tell me if this conversation has happened in health and welfare, or has it not? Is it?
The ADM question?
Yeah.
It's been mentioned,
Okay.
but there were no conclusions.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Please continue.
Okay. So I just want to share the thinking of our 4 associations after our meeting with Sarah. I had another meeting right after that, Sarah, so I had even less time than you. So if I have spelling mistakes in mine, I apologize. I put together as best I could, and I'm going to try to use the model of former Commissioner of Education David Walk from Rhode Island, just talk straight and tell the truth. It's the simplest thing to do. Our 4 organizations thought that having this full study with everybody involved and looking at every aspect, this is too unwieldy a task force with too broad a scope. We don't support that. We think it's a recipe to do nothing, and it's too far from the concept of 4-year-olds in public schools, as was introduced in S56, which is what we support. We believe the question isn't whether to do it, but how to do it, how to effectively do it in terms of 4-year-olds in public schools. We think the implementation study plan we put forth would answer those questions. I mentioned full day ADM. I have that testimony in here again, how we think that's really hurting some of our poorest communities. We need to update that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's a committee bill, so we'll have to bring it down.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, it's okay. Sorry. So my assignment was work with the V's to make this happen. I thought we were all working on the same page on that. And the four of us came to agreement. And I have a lot of respect for Let's Grow Kids. They're an advocacy group with a mission, and we get that, but we think we're advocating for what's going to be best in the long run here. No more waiting lists for 4-year-olds. We strongly believe this will positively affect the entire state and will help long-term programs as well. And we've got a bunch of superintendents and folks that are lined up to testify to that effect. In fact, the Windsor Central superintendent will say that they've gone to this model, right? Full day 4-year-olds. And they've had 2 new private businesses, private early care programs open up. Unfortunately, their testimony was canceled. It hasn't been rescheduled, and that should happen because they know what's going on in their communities. And we have many communities that we don't feel are represented because they don't have any local providers. We're hearing some of the same things we heard about kindergarten years ago, and we really think that public schools with licensed early educators is the place for our Vermont 4-year-olds. Optional to the parents, of course. As I said, some schools are already doing this. If we give them the full ADM and make it clear expectation with a timeline, our schools are going to respond to that. Additionally, our organizations are fully supportive of significant increases in CCFAP funds for private K programs. And we think we can almost immediately take care of the 4-year-olds not getting access to high quality educational developmentally appropriate experiences by having them have full day, full year, full day, full week programs. And we think to not move forward on that is a failure for our students. We think the same old process really isn't working very well. I think it's time to disrupt the system a little bit. The questions in this study concept were supposed to be answered by Act 166. Here we are 7 years later, we're kind of asking the same questions. I think your former Secretary of Education would speak well on this too, Rebecca Holcomb, who was one of the people that pushed Act 166 in. And she will say that hasn't done what she thought it would. So if we get these kids into public schools with licensed teachers, with health benefits, with retirement benefits, who are appropriately trained, and are compensated appropriately for full-day school-based programs, we think it'll help the entire state economically in the short term and in the long run. And as you said, Senator Campion, this is the Senate Education Committee. We think this is good for Vermont students and positions us to have truly the best education in the nation. Worries about using education fund dollars to prop up private businesses should not be our main concern here. I know that's a concern. I understand that, but we think doing right by thousands of children should be in front of that. And then lastly, if you want to do the full study committee option to look at all aspects of early childhood programming, then we think the charge should be as follows: how to expand UPK to ensure best child outcomes, including all options for expansion. I took that right from the Let's Grow Kids document, and an implementation plan to move 4-year-olds into public schools. And to us, that sounds like a compromise that would make a lot of sense. Thank you.
Jay, I do need to just point out, and I know you didn't do it intentionally, I'm sure. I do recognize that Let's Grow Kids is an advocacy group, but in this building, you two are a registered advocate, I believe.
Yeah, and we are absolutely advocating
So
for.
I just want to make sure, I appreciate that, but I also, the sentence that says you're advocating for the right thing for kids here, implying that Let's Grow Kids isn't, I'm just going to.
We're not trying to imply that. We're implying
I
that we
didn't think
think.
you would, and I just wanted to recognize that so that you.
I want to be really clear for the record. We're advocating that we think this is the right thing for all 4-year-olds in the state.
Right.
And I've always been a supporter of Let's Grow Kids, and I think they're doing a lot of great work. And I think all the other Vs feel the same way.
Great, yeah.
Can I highlight one area where I think
Yes,
we are in
please.
agreement, which
Yeah.
is the notion that, I think as Jay said, the same old of Act 166 could use improvement.
Yeah.
I think we are in agreement that 10 hours of universal pre-K is insufficient
Yeah,
for families. And so I think the crux of the question is, are we expanding through the current system, or are we moving all 4-year-olds into public schools? And that is the question that I think has raised a lot of concerns among a lot of people. And I totally appreciate what Jay and his colleagues are advocating for. And it may be that is a way that we get the best outcomes for children eventually, but it feels like it warrants contemplation through a study to see whether that is the right choice or whether there's an opportunity to expand through our current mixed delivery system. And what produces, as we agree, what produces the best outcomes for children. And I think
We think it's, I want to just say a couple things related to that. The 10-year-old piece, we're in 100% agreement with Sarah. What did I say? 10-year-old, I'm 10.
10-year-olds,
I
yeah.
told you I'm not feeling good.
I
The
know.
10
It's
hours
also the
piece-
Friday before town meeting.
Yeah, the 10 hours piece is not enough. And we've seen lots of research, and I know Building Bright Futures could comment on that too, that we've got to be able to increase the contact time where kids are getting instruction from licensed early childhood experts that really know what they're doing. And that 10 hours is just so inefficient, ineffective. I mean, they need much more time than that. So I totally agree with that. I also do want to reiterate again, though, that we believe we're ready for the 4-year-olds right now and that we can make a huge difference by moving in that direction.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing or saying anything except the direction that I've been given by the pro tem's office, and that key cannot be turned this year. How can we spend the summer getting ready for that key to be turned? So I get it, and maybe the Health and Welfare and Education Committee will come together and have a conversation, and we all decide, oh no, this can be done. But that's not the direction that, at least when I sat down with the pro tem and the chair and vice chair of Health and Welfare, that wasn't the message that I was left with. So
Remember, we're talking 2 years from now. People keep saying we're trying to do this for next year. That our proposal does not say that at all. It
okay.
says very first thing is it would start on July 1, 2025. The only thing we're asking for right now is ADM so that your poorer schools actually get compensated for the money they're spending on kids.
See. Got it. Now I see. I apologize. Committee, so this to me, we could sit here, we could ask a bunch of questions. Happy to do that, but I also think that there needs to be some direction given to the committee on this. And I think it's really going to be first and foremost a conversation with the corner office, our lawyer, and the chair of Health and Welfare, and our vice chair, if she's willing to sort of serve as that liaison between the two committees. Senator Gulick.
Yes, I definitely am willing to do that. So in terms of the 1.0 ADM to put in place now, separate from the study, is that something that we would need to write a bill for? How would we get that to move forward?
It's a great question. I think this would be something that ultimately would land in finance, and I can check with her and with Ledge Council. I mean, we could draft the bill, we could do it, and then it would make its way around so that it would end up in finance and approach ultimately.
Okay, so I would move to do that while also taking on the work of the summer study as a separate piece of work.
Yeah, and please know, everyone, I'm not averse to that. I just don't know the ramifications of it, just because it seems like it was just this is a new conversation for me, that's all. But happy to look into it and happy to work with you and others if that's the direction everybody wants to move in.
Yes, okay, thank you.
You bet.
I would just reiterate that we're not opposed to the idea of looking at a full ADM for existing programs, but we would also want to look at the tuition reimbursement for private partner programs that are also providing full day universal pre-K.
Yeah, kind of getting a taste of Health and Welfare this morning. Ms. St. James.
Thank you, Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. I'm sorry, but before everyone disappears, I just want to make sure we're using I understand and you all understand what you're talking about when you use the term ADM. ADM is a number that's used to calculate the weighted membership, and I'm wondering if what you all are talking about are weights. A weight. Okay.
Beth, we're talking about weights. I
Okay.
would ADM because in our conversation, everybody at the V's thought that it would be, people wouldn't understand what it meant. We'd have to try to explain it. And they thought everybody would understand what we meant if we went this way. We were absolutely talking about weights.
Okay. The terms do have two different meanings. So
I know.
Just so everyone's on the same page.
Oh, yes.
Talking about weight.
Thinking of the other, yes.
Thank you.
Right, yeah. Clint, do you want to say anything?
I don't. I am the drafter of S56, so I thought I would listen in and see what direction the committee was heading in. And once you have some drafting guidance, I'll be working with Beth to put the language together.
Great, okay. Does it, so from where I'm sitting, it makes sense for us to have a smaller meeting with, and try to understand the direction that the legislature wants to move in, and then we'll return and work on this a little bit during the week, if anybody wants to be involved, and then pick it up next week. Okay.
Can I ask a quick process question?
Yeah, please.
Katie, this might be for you or for Beth, but so the pre-K is being removed from S56, correct?
It's removed, the substance is removed, but the amendment you're working on is a placeholder. And my understanding is that whatever comes out of this committee is going into where that placeholder currently is.
Okay,
So we'll ultimately end up in S56, I think, is what
That's my understanding as well.
okay, so it's not, Beth isn't creating a new bill. She's just creating an amendment to S56.
That's right, and I don't even think of it, I'm not even thinking of it as a, it's not like it's gonna be a floor amendment, it's just gonna be the committee's recommendations to the Health and Welfare Committee to be attached to S56.
Okay,
And we'll take a vote, we'll do all of that, but it won't travel on its own in any way from S56. That I think we're all, I think, clear on. Okay, so I am gonna get up from my chair, walk down, see the Chair of Health and Welfare, and as well as Ledge Council, and see if we can get some guidance on what we should be working on during the week. Our liaison is standing by for direction, and we'll go from there. Sound okay? Senator Gulick, good? Okay, Senator Gulick, are you available after I talk to the Chair of Health and Welfare?
sure thing.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate all the work. And we will convene again after town meeting week. And during that week, we will work on this and hopefully come up with some language that everybody's going to be in agreement on, or at least the majority of people will be in agreement on.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all.
We're done. Have a great week.